Have you ever wondered, do the oppressors actually have souls, or do they merely impersonate the behaviors of empathy and sympathy, therefore pretend to do so? This is not hate speech. There exists scientific evidence and historical evidences that requires that we explore these questions. According to many scientists, the pineal gland, located in the center of the brain, is important not only because it produces melanin, but also because the pineal gland produces the human traits, characteristics, and behaviors associated with possessing a soul. This includes sympathy, compassion, empathy, and remorse. It's therefore regarded as the principal seat of the soul. Scientists have found that the pineal gland within our oppressors are over 80% calcified and therefore non-functioning. This literally means that the pineal gland that produces the human traits, characteristics, and behaviors associated with possessing a soul only functions at a 20% capacity level within our oppressors. Therefore, 80% of what controls our oppressors' thoughts, decisions, and behaviors in regard to the soul does not work. When observing these scientific findings that 80% of where the soul lies within our oppressors is calcified, and then comparing these findings to the oppressors' horrific, immoral, collective behaviors demonstrated throughout history, have forced many to legitimately ask, is there a correlation between their calcified pineal gland and their immoral behaviors demonstrated throughout history? Moreover, it has forced many to legitimately ask the question, does the oppressors actually have souls, or do they merely impersonate the behaviors of empathy and sympathy, which are associated with having a soul? As I said, this is not hate. These words are revealing the truth they brainwash millions of us not to see. Let's look at the facts as they truly are. Throughout history, the oppressors have demonstrated an almost total disregard for the human lives of other racial groups. Their subjugation, murder, and exploitation of all other races are unparalleled. The reality is that there has never been a time in history where of which the oppressors have not either exploited millions of people and have contributed either directly or indirectly to the misery, suffering, and deaths of millions. They've killed more people throughout history than all of the other racial groups have done so combined. It's a fact that we're forbidden through censorship and sanctions from ever speaking of. In the book, The Iceman Inheritance, author Michael J. Bradley, who himself is a Caucasian, writes that racism, the threat of nuclear war, environmental pollution, and other social problems are the results of behaviors, values, and psychology of our oppressors. He further stated that throughout history, the oppressors have demonstrated an entrenched predisposition for brutal racism that is matched only by their proclivity for deceit, greed, and hunger for power. They alone are the most arrogant and the race most predisposed to racism, and all other races have been either their enemies or their victims. And during slavery in the U.S., the life of the African slave was wrought by constant brutal degradation. The enslavers were both cruel and barbarous. They seldom, if ever, governed their slaves by moral influence, but by whipping, kicking, beating, starving, branding, loading with iron, imprisoning, and by some other cruel mode of torturing. They often boast of having invented some new mode of torture by which they could tame their slaves. Many white enslavers whipped their African slaves until they were too tired to continue, until the backs of these slaves were gore and saturation of blood. Sometimes after being whipped, some slaves were locked into dark places and deprived of food in order to increase their torment. Some of these slaves died of their wounds, and starvation. The brutal enslavers also castrated black men and used female slaves for genealogical research, all while not providing them with any anesthesia. They claimed that black people could endure a greater level of pains. The slave masters also had sex farms where they would rape black men, black women, and children. The raping of black men was called buck breaking, and marriages among the enslaved Africans was not recognized by the white enslavers. A family of slaves had no rights to remain together or to keep their offspring, and the master enjoyed full discretion to have sex with any slaves that he choose, male, female, or child. Marriage and family arrangement amongst the enslaved was entirely up to the discretion of the master. The white masters often raped any they desired. They even raped and committed incest with their own mulatto daughters. They had sex with their own mulatto daughters. While labeling all other races as being savages throughout history, the oppressors have in fact been the most brutally savage throughout history. It's a fact that has been subliminally pushed from the collective minds of most people through their films that constantly depicting them as being heroes and saviors. When observing the scientific findings that 80% of where the soul lies within the oppressors is calcified, has forced many to legitimately ask, is there a correlation between their calcified pineal gland and their moral behaviors demonstrated throughout history? Moreover, it has forced many to legitimately ask the question, do the oppressors actually have souls, or are they merely impersonating the behaviors that are associated with having a soul? It's a logical conclusion given these facts, these noted facts. The 1999 Matrix film, Neo awakens to discover that the humans are mentally enslaved by soulless beings. These soulless beings are the programmers of everything that the humans believe. They kept the humans trapped within a false version of reality, which keeps them mentally enslaved, thus allowing the soulless beings to exploit these humans without any resistance. The white oppressors often reveal through movies what they've done to black people. Some describe this practice as being a form of ritual mocking of the victim, but it's actually a practice that allows the oppressors to avoid the law of karma. It's called the revelation of the method. There are hidden rules and principles within this warfare of domination that must be adhered to. The oppressors must make their oppressive tactics available to the oppressed. They therefore often embed them within movies and TV shows and books. Because the oppressive tactics have been made available, when the oppressed do not act upon the knowledge, by default, they've given the oppressors permission to oppress them. It's a social contract that allows the oppressors to avoid the law of karma. The 1999 Matrix film is a revelation of method that allows our oppressors, that reveals what our oppressors have done to black people. It allows the oppressors to avoid the law of karma. What I'm revealing is not some feeble-minded conspiracy theory based upon a fictional movie that only purpose is to entertain us, as so many have been brainwashed to respond. It's the truth that white oppressive forces don't want black people to ever learn. The real Matrix is not a computer simulation. It's not a movie, nor does it have anything to do with a red pill. The real Matrix is a false, illusory worldview grafted upon us from birth through the white society's monopoly over information that are fed into a society. Because public perception of reality is shaped by the information that is fed into a society. The white society's control over the information that, therefore, it literally means that they control the perception of reality. They therefore feed false information into our society to distort the perception of reality to be seen in ways that empowers themselves. It's the real matrix. More specifically, the real matrix is an elaborate perception management system. Perception management is a propaganda technique that involves altering the perception of reality to suit the objective of the ruling class. It's an essential part of modern information warfare. This disclosed black matrix perception management system creates disinformation and misinformation propaganda campaigns, which also includes distortion of the past, in order to create an illusionary truth effect within a society that aids in maintaining white social dominance. The illusory truth effect is when people have been made to believe false information is true because of being constantly and repetitively fed the false information. And they then begin functioning based upon those false information rather than what is actually true. Therefore, function based upon a false version of reality. The white establishment constantly feeds false information into a society that distorts the public perception of reality in ways that aids them in maintaining their position of social dominance. I never said that what I teach will be easy for all to comprehend. I only promised that it would be the truth, and that if you learned it, it would emancipate your minds from white mental slavery. This is a fact. Within the real matrix, the true Homo sapiens are being mentally enslaved by soulless beings. These soulless beings are actually primates that masquerade themselves as being the highest evolved Homo sapiens. They're actually not of we African Homo sapiens. We are the true Homo sapiens. They evolved as totally separate species from we African Homo sapiens. The scientific term for these soulless beings is called Homo sapiens sapiens. The term is defined as modern humans that evolved from lower primates. We are of man and they are of mankind. These soulless beings are the programmers of everything that we Homo sapiens believe. They constantly and systematically feed us mental enslaving lies that keeps us trapped with a perpetual state of mental enslavement that allowed them to continue their exploitation of us without any significant black resistance. As a consequence of this, millions of us are functioning not based upon reality, but are functioning based upon a false version of reality that serves to protect the system of white supremacy. It's the true reason why many black people now perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres our oppressors in spite of such a brutally horrific history and reality of the contrary. This is all possible because regardless of how intelligent the human mind is, if it's possible to control the input into the human mind, it's entirely possible to control what people will think. The oppressors have exploited their monopoly over information that is systematically fed into our mind to make us think and behave in ways that serves them. In doing so, they've created an elaborate prison for the collective minds of black people. It's the real black people's matrix. And those black people who don't critically think never notices their mental chains. Welcome to the real world. The black liberating truth has finally come forward. However, many black people are afraid to accept the truth because of the inherent call for action that comes with accepting it. They therefore instead cling to their biblical fairy tale and the silly slave syndrome myth that keeps us complacent and mentally enslaved and keeps our liberation stagnant, thus keeping us functioning as self-enslaving wardens of our own mental prison. It's the real black people's matrix. I'm telling you the truth. Those of us who tell you the truth are trying to free you from a mental prison that you don't even know you're in. Learn more at theblackpeoplesmatrix.com. Please share these videos. Constantly share it. Learn the information. One love and peace.